Today on In Her Words, we're sitting down with Candice Wilson Cherry. Candice is an executive vice president and producer and head of film for HARTBEAT, which is Kevin Hart's production company. She tells us about her lifestyle job. I love that term. She looks at everything she sees as inspiration and possibility for the next project. We think you're really going to love her and learn something today. Hi, Candice.
Hi, Gretchen. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. I'm sorry it took me a couple minutes. We are having the worst storm. So
Oh,
if you see me jump out of my seat and you can't hear the thunder, that's why.
where are you based?
We're Women in Entertainment is based in New York, but I'm in Kansas City right now. So we
Oh,
are having a very typical summer storm, like moving across the plains, I think.
oh
But
my God.
it was like a half an hour before our podcast starts. It is
Oh,
storming. I had to put my dogs away. I was like, oh
oh
my God, it's going to be so
no.
loud when I'm talking to Candace.
That's so tough. I have three
There's
dogs also, so I get it. They did not love we had a very unusual winter with a lot of
Yes.
rain out here and storms, and they didn't love it.
Are you in LA?
I'm in LA, but I'm actually a New York, New Jersey native, so I know
Oh.
the East Coast summer storms very well, and I'm sure
Uh,
Midwest is just the same.
yeah, no, with every, I don't know, every day I feel like it's another area. So yeah, if you see me jump out of my chair, that's why.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to talk to you. And, there's so much going on in your, in the industry and so much going on with HARTBEAT, but thanks for taking the time out to be with us. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, likewise, likewise.
One of the things we're trying to do with our podcast is bring in executives. We like to have a lot of, women in front of the camera, women behind the camera, women behind the desk, we like to say, but
Mhm.
just to really share stories of how you got to where you are.
Mhm.
I haven't met anyone yet who is on that linear path that didn't get ping ponged off and do something unexpected. So,
Yeah.
but what I'd like to start with is just how you got to where you are today. Did you know you wanted to be in entertainment? Did you know films were your passion? And after we hear your story, we have to hear just how in the world you got connected with Kevin Hart.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited to tell this story because I think, to your point, it's so important for women to hear these stories. And I also have a very untraditional, like my journey to where I am today. The trajectory was very untraditional. I grew up in New Jersey, born in New York, raised in New Jersey. Had no one in my family that worked in entertainment, but from a really young age, I always loved storytelling. I liked watching movies. I loved movies. I loved music. I loved reading books. I was just into story in all
Mhm.
forms. Started writing my own little stories and songs at a really young age, and really always looked for opportunities, whether it's in school or locally, anything I could do to create. I was always trying to get my friends to help me like create things. Like so at a really young age, I actually started as a songwriter.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Okay.
I actually started as a songwriter, but I also always had aspirations to be a producer. Although in hindsight, I don't think I even fully understood what it meant to be a
Right. I
producer.
was like, how did you know what a producer was?
I must have. I've always been into history, and I've
Okay.
always been into studying the stories of other women
Mhm.
that I respected. Or if I was going through a magazine and I would read about, let's say I was reading something about Mariah Carey, because I just think about this is how I discovered Minnie Riperton, the singer
Mhm.
songwriter.
Mhm.
And I remember her saying that that was like her childhood, like, icon hero. And I went and researched her, and I asked my mom to help me buy the records and all that sort of stuff. So I would go, and then I'd want to know where they went to school and where they studied music and all that sort of stuff. So I've always been into studying the trajectory of other women that I've respected. that I aspired to be like or glean something from. I've always loved that. So I went to Temple University. I'm a Temple University in Philadelphia alumni. I majored in film journalism in their media program. They had a program that sort of covered the gamut. It was film, TV, a little bit of drama. So it allowed you to sort of touch on a bunch of different things and discover, which passion you had, more of an affinity for. So in that process, I learned about film, and that was like my first introduction to really getting into film, helping to work on friends' short films, um, learning about permit process and things like that.
The business side of it, and people don't realize what goes into it. Were
I
you always
always
very organized? You sound like you were very organized, and
It's
that.
funny. I think I was so kind of like what I touched on before. Music was always my focus. Like I always thought that I would go into music first. Hopefully, I would have success as a songwriter. But I was always a little aware that I was way more organized than a lot of my peers. Like I felt like there was a little bit more of like a corporate side to me. When I say corporate, not necessarily like had to be in a studio sense, but I felt like I was always into like the organizing of it. I had
Mhm.
started like a publishing company really young and was constantly researching like what it meant to have a publishing company and all that sort of stuff. So always very entrepreneurial. I come from a very entrepreneurial family.
Mhm.
My mom is an immigrant from Jamaica and just like super hardworking, had her own businesses. My dad also had an incredible business. So I had that entrepreneurial spirit from a young age and they always incorporated us in that process. So we knew what it meant to like have to figure things out, have
Mhm.
to, what it goes into being an entrepreneur, which is a 7 day a week business,
Right, right.
in some capacity. Even if it's a day off, it's not really a day off when you own your own business. So indirectly, music is what brought me to Los Angeles. After I graduated from college, I started teaming up with songwriters in the New York area, established producers who really kind of helped me cut my teeth and understood what it took to be a professional songwriter. And like, because there was a difference between loving music and writing a song, and then
Right, right.
understanding like the technique of actually getting a song for a placement, what placements were, what that meant. Um,
Mhm.
and at that same time, I was always collaborating with other creatives. So while in New York City, I had friends working on films. I had friends that were directors on music videos. And sometimes I was the assistant to the director. Sometimes you're the gaffer. Sometimes when you're working on an indie budget or you're working on a
Right,
small
right.
budget, you really learn the ins and outs of all the different departments, what they do, how they do it, which is so important as a producer.
To know
And
every aspect, yeah.
it's so important.
I can't believe how many times it's come up as we've started the podcast and talking to creatives and executives. Music videos.
Yes.
Music videos come up all the time of people,
Yes.
getting their starts. And and it hasn't aired yet, but it's Nazinga Stewart, who is just
I
fantastic.
love her.
Yeah, so she was talking about videos that were kind of like music videos that were kind of like under the radar, cash only. But
Yeah.
music videos come up a lot.
And it's such a great way, I feel, for filmmakers to, stretch their creativity.
Yeah, yeah,
Oftentimes they're able to, a lot of times you're working with a smaller budget and you still
right.
have deadlines and you still have to deliver a great product within a certain time frame, within budget. It's a great sort
Hmm.
of learning
Hmm.
mechanism. But so working in New York, working at the same time on film, started working on commercials and things like that. Songwriting is what brought me to Los Angeles. I came out here to write and team up. And indirectly, that's how I ended up meeting Jeff Clanagan, who's one of Kevin Hart's business partners.
Hmm.
And he's the founder of Code Black. Now he's at HARTBEAT, but
Hmm.
this was probably around like 2011. And at that time, he was with Universal Vivendi and was moving over to Lionsgate. And
Okay, okay.
I came on board, and they were looking for someone to be an assistant and help with the tours, the comedy tours, Shaq's All Star Comedy Jam. And there were a lot of similarities I found between comedy live shows and music live shows. So it wasn't really foreign to me. Um, and I was just looking for a way to kind of stretch a little bit. I was a little frustrated with the music industry,
Hmm.
which anyone who's been in the music industry could understand the frustrations that come along with being in the music industry. And I was looking to try something different. And I knew that I had this love of film and story. And this was a great opportunity. And I don't think at the time I fully even understood how far it would take me, but I just really enjoyed it. And I think it's
Right,
so
right.
important to love what you do. Because at a certain point, like this becomes, these are, I call these lifestyle jobs. It goes back to
That's
the
a great
entrepreneur.
term. A great term.
It goes back to the entrepreneur piece
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they are 7 day a week jobs. Like when
Mhm,
you're not in the
mhm.
office, you might be reading, you might be watching a play that might inspire something,
Right,
you might
right.
be reading an article, and then now you're on a hunt to get the rights to that article. So you have to really have a passion for it and a love for it that's able to withstand sort of the turbulence that comes along with, you know, the challenges of the industry, because it can be very fickle,
Mhm,
whether
mhm.
you're in film, whether you're in music, whether you're in TV. It could be it has everything comes with its own challenges, but that love I think helps you endure it and really enjoy it and evolve, because you have to be able to evolve with the business as well as technology evolves, as creativity evolves,
Mhm.
as trends evolve, and technology, just people's desires for what they want to see changes and shifts.
Right, right.
So I started working at Lionsgate. I was there for about 7 years. Started as an assistant. So I always like to say I was an outdoor cat. Like you have indoor cats and you have outdoor cats, right? When you come from the indie space and you're more like the physical production space or songwriting, that whole thing, you're a little bit, I think, more scrappy in some ways, because you learn to
Right,
like
right.
kind of make things with what you have and be very, very resourceful, really lean on your relationships and understand the value of great relationships, and how that helps you, helps them, helps your network to build and grow. And but when I went to Lionsgate, I realized there were certain areas, even with my college degree, I graduated with honors, the whole bit, but I still had I had blind spots because I
Right.
didn't come from the traditional, some people they do the internships for at film studios, at TV
Mhm, mhm.
production companies, so they are just a little bit more knowledgeable in certain areas. So I had blind spots, making essentially an industry shift, coming from music and thinking my sights were here. Now I was there. And I didn't like that. I didn't like feeling like I didn't know certain things
Right,
that
right.
people knew. So I really kind of buckled down. And, that for me, what that meant was I was at the office by like 6:30 in the morning, and I would bring my breakfast and I would be reading the trades every day. I wanted to know who, what, where, what
Right.
studios, what's
Mhm.
acquisitions, what does it mean to acquire? Like I just wanted to learn everything I possibly could so that when I was in a meeting or having conversations, I was able to be a contributor, not only keep up, but be a contributor to those conversations in a meaningful way. It's important for everyone, but I think it's especially important for a young woman to make sure you're really equipping yourself with that same knowledge, like we were saying before, understanding all the areas. Even if
Right,
you don't have
right.
to be an expert in everything, but you have to know, you want to have a knowledge base of what everyone does. Like you don't want to be in the silo. And I think it also helps you to endure, once again, when there are shifts in the industry,
Being able to
you're
move
able to
around.
move around and
Yeah.
pivot and those things. Um, so while at Lionsgate, I basically went from an assistant to a vice president over the course of the time I was there. I
Mhm,
worked in acquisitions and development on the
mhm.
feature side, but I did touch TV. I did touch TV. And I absolutely loved it. I even credit acquisitions, which I think doesn't get enough credit. I don't think a lot of people fully understand fully what acquisitions are if you're not in the business.
Right, right.
But for anyone watching that may not know what acquisitions is, it's basically you're the buyer. You go to the festivals, the market. You also, you have a great network of creatives and filmmakers who potentially will bring you projects, or you'll go to them to pre-buy projects, films, and so forth. Sometimes you work with development to acquire rights to things to bring in at different stages. So it may be in the post stage, and you might be able to bring it in early and get your team an opportunity to take a look at it. and and then like I said, you go to the markets and the festivals to buy the films that are already completed. So those may
Mhm.
be films that were independently financed, independently produced, that are now looking for a home. So you go there, you license the film, you bring it back, and then you figure out the distribution plan, whether it be theatrical, streaming, what have you. And
And I think you need to add in there, you have to have really good taste to be in acquisitions, and not so much in just what you like, but being able to
Mhm.
watch something and know who its audience may be, because you're looking at it as, how would a fan, how would the public, how would
Yes,
a fan appreciate this? How does it affect my business? So
yes,
acquisitions it is a very, it's a special skill to be good at
it
acquisitions.
It is, and it's such an interesting area. I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of people aren't really aware of acquisitions, or I think that when, like, for instance, when we have interns come in, the sexier, cooler thing is everyone wants to be in production.
Right,
Everyone wants
right.
to be in development. But really, I credit acquisitions to making me a better producer and a better film executive, because
Uh-huh.
ultimately I walk into, when I get a script, when the team is looking at something for consideration, my thought is always, a, with acquisitions also, you're very aware of the business of it, the business
Right.
model. That's a big part of it. You have your models ran, you're looking at territories, how it will perform in the
Mhm.
US, how it will perform internationally. So to your point, it's you have to really understand not only your demo that you're servicing with your division in your company, but you have to also think about what's the potential longevity of this,
Right.
potential reach of this internationally. And as a film exec now, that's not in acquisitions, like specifically, and also as a producer, I often think, if you wouldn't buy it, should you make it?
Interesting.
You
Interesting. Well, and
know?
also I would think, and for acquisitions are, you really have to have both, because acquisitions can happen faster, can
Yes,
get out faster, while, like you said, everyone loves producing and developing. That can take years for
years.
projects to keep going, and how you fill in those acquisitions to keep your slate full. That's a
Yeah,
real, again, how they all mesh together.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I acquisitions to me has been such a useful
Hmm.
tool. Um, and I often think, like, you kind of back into projects, like you think about when it can come out and how it,
Right.
all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I did that for 6.5 years. Um, and then also, I just want to kind of throw in there, because I'm always a proponent for continued education.
Hmm.
Also, when realizing I had some blind spots, I went back to school. I took courses at UCLA at night while working full time to learn more about legal
Hmm.
contracts, financing films, film financing. I took screenwriting courses. I had no aspirations of being a screenwriter, but for me, I wanted to understand. So if I'm giving notes to one of my writers, they're not like, oh, here they come again. Here come the
Right. Right. The
here come
suits.
here come the suits. I'm like, I'm a suit. Once again, I'm an outdoor cat. Because I'm on the inside, I'm like, oh no, I'm a suit now. You
You are
need
an
suits.
entrepreneur at heart. I mean, you could be the textbook definition of an entrepreneur, and but you kept that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, as you were working for a company, I mean, it doesn't ever go away, because that what you're describing, is what entrepreneurs do day in and day out. Like you said, never, 7 days a week learning and filling
Yes.
in the gaps.
But it goes back to, like, I really love it. Like, I,
Yeah.
I respect artists. I feel like I respect artistry. I think if you hire a writer to come in and write, as the executive working with that writer, it's not my job to tell a professional writer how to write. You have to give people space
Right.
to spread their creative wings. Like, you've hired them because you trust their ability. And it's your job as their executive or their producer on the project to be knowledgeable enough on how to give proper notes,
Hmm.
challenge a thought, or
Hmm.
hopefully spark an idea that will
Hmm.
make the project better without getting in the way. Because sometimes executives can get in the way and producers
Oh
can
yeah.
get in the way. And then you have a Frankenstein project because they're trying to please you to get it done, or they're just frustrated and it goes haywire. So that's something that's always been, I think, in respecting the art, loving the art, you have to understand how to best move a project forward and not block it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that's
Mm-hmm.
important to
A
know.
great, yeah, a very delicate balance.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And knowing when you're kind of treading the line of, hampering the
Yeah.
process, you
Yeah.
have to know when to kind of like give that space as well.
How did you move from Lionsgate? Did you move to, was Lionsgate right before Heartbeat?
So at the same time, there's a bit of a parallel story happening at the same time here. So I met Jeff, as I mentioned, Jeff Flanagan
Mm-hmm.
in 2011, who was one of Kevin's business partners. And so through that relationship, Jeff has been an incredible mentor and boss to me throughout the years, just always very encouraging of growth and just very knowledgeable. He's someone that if you seek the knowledge, he is excited to share the knowledge. Like he just loves seeing people excited about, the different areas. Um, Through that relationship though, I started working with Kevin probably around 2011, 2012 in different capacities, sometimes associate producing on live shows and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I was working mainly with him on live shows at that time. So his big arena tours and things like
Mm-hmm.
that started as a PA, production assistant. um, at one point was an associate producer and then eventually moved up to producer and have worked with him in that capacity for a long time. So I think through that process, the trust is built and him like really feeling comfortable like with my work ethic and all those sort of things. But he's just been fantastic. It's a great, great team collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to what we were saying. I think at this stage, for me, loving what you do and loving who you do it with is very important. um, it just makes the work fun because work's going to be work at some point. Like
Right,
even
right.
we love it. I don't care if you're the most amazing chef. Well, being a chef is actually very hard work, but
It
very
all is.
stressful.
Everything, yeah. Even if you love it, and if you love it, you want it to be more successful, so
You
you
want
work
it
even
to
harder.
be amazing,
Yeah.
yeah. And you want to work with people that have that same sort of work ethic, and he absolutely does. And the whole
Mhm.
team really has that work ethic. Like you work with people that love what they do. They're not satisfied with just like mediocre. They want to
Mhm.
create and expand. So after Lionsgate, I consulted a bit, did a little bit of freelancing, and for me, it was really important after so many years in development to get my hands dirty. I wanted to do physical production. Like
Okay.
I really wanted to work in a space that I would see faster turnaround.
Mhm.
I was very frustrated leaving the studio life, just seeing projects that had been in develop for a really long time. And by the way, that's totally normal. But
Right, right.
I was very eager to, I think, prove to myself that I could lead productions and lead physical productions and help to build teams and work with other people that wanted to get things done. And around that time, LOL, they were moving into 30-minute formats.
Mhm.
So going from more short form into 30-minute formats, hour-long formats, and that's when we started working on Die Hart. So I came on board when Die Hart was in the works with Quibi, and it was just such an incredible process. Just a really fun group. Um, Kevin was just amazing, and just he gives everything 1,000%,
Mhm.
and the whole team did as well. And yeah, we produced that one, developed it, produced it for Quibi, who was also a great partner to us. Those executives are still in our orbit. They're all in different
Right,
places,
right.
doing great things. And that was just such a fun project. And it's really nice when you have fun doing something, but then you see that people are receiving it and it's resonating. And now it's on to its second one, and it's just doing great. So came on board freelance initially, then started heading up their production and development where we did Olympic highlights.
Right. Oh my
Um,
god, which is so freaking funny. It
yeah,
is
love it.
it's so good. When I was doing the work and I was like, "Oh my god, we have to talk about Olympic highlights."
Oh, please, like whatever you want to talk about. That was again, so as a producer, as an executive, what a great opportunity for our company also to
Yeah.
stretch our wings. Like that was a space. So one thing that's really great is, Heartbeat, and before it was like, that was a Heartbeat production. I'm trying to think if that was before the merger or after the merger, but um we've been doing sports comedy sort
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
fusion projects for a long time, and we've had a lot of success in that space. and we've built sort of an audience in that area. So this was a really organic sort of transition into like the Olympic highlights, because we have Cold as Balls. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yes,
as well,
yes.
which
I
has
have
been
three
so.
teenage sons. We're
I love that. Have you
we're in
watched,
all of it.
really watched the show? Okay.
Yes.
It's been great. It's like what a great opportunity to have these like very candid conversations. They're lighthearted, but they
Yeah.
also are with people like all these amazing athletes that audiences love. So sports and comedy has already been part of the DNA of the company. So it was a really organic sort of transition, but what an awesome opportunity to be and for the company to be entrusted with the Olympics and to do something
Mhm.
like fun like this. And they were Peacock were great partners to us in that process. Um, and we were working like on a bit of a live schedule, like
Yeah.
the so the Olympics, like so the event would shoot like the day before, would take place the day before, and really within 24 hours we were featuring that segment and turning it around like within a day. So that was a bit of a new experience because we were also
Mhm.
dealing with time difference
Yeah,
a bit,
absolutely.
but just so much fun and the
Is
collaboration.
it will it continue with the next round of Olympics? Can you share that?
We hope so. Who
Yeah.
knows? We'll see. I guess you never know.
That's
But
it's so it no, it is funny. It sounds one thing that's coming up, or that I'm hearing with meeting you and hearing your story and what I mean, what I know of Kevin Hart obviously is public, but he's one of the few, huge stars that has such a respected business side where
Mhm.
he is, because there's so many creatives and so many, public facing actors, they don't want the business side. They don't have that skill. And he is, I mean, he's so known for that. And it sounds like he, you do too. You have such a creative side, which is where you started with your music, but your
Mhm.
business side is as equally as strong, and that's not common. Is
Yeah.
that, do you think that's what, almost like he seeks that out, and Jeff as well, like that
Mhm.
he needs people around him, the company needs people that really do have those, both of those sides working for them. It sounds
Yeah,
like that's something you have in common.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's definitely the spirit of the company,
Mm,
which I'm sure is no accident. I think that like when you have I think in any position, any company you're in, when you're working and your CEO or your chairman or the heads of the company essentially, when you see that they're working just as hard as you're working, I think that that's really aspirational to the team. It helps people to roll up their sleeves, and that's what we have here. Like it's something where I'll never forget like working on a production and it was just really hot outside and he was just getting it. Like he just no complaints, get the job done, still so fun, still just really just kind to everyone, speaks to everyone. I think that essence is what it's all about. I think it's super important from the leadership of a company to possess that as well. And that is the environment and the climate. And it makes
right.
all the difference in the world. I think that it encourages a spirit of growth, creativity, all of those things when you feel like everyone is doing the work. And it's not
Right,
just
right.
and it's not just like the supporting team, like everyone has that same common goal to be better than, to create something better than before, to improve upon. Um, and I think even things like Women Right Now, which is our program that we
Right. I
create,
wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
yeah, that's something that he's been very, very supportive. But I think that's a perfect example of when we look at expanding on something,
Mhm.
expanding on a vision and a common goal. Ty Randolph, who's our CEO, we worked really closely to launch this program. And early on, when I first came on board, like we had a lot of conversations about looking for female showrunners,
Mhm.
and it was so challenging. And the thing is, that's not to say that they're not there. But then I
What
started.
was tell me what was challenging? Was it that they weren't there, or that there wasn't enough?
There is still there's a lot of improvements, but
Mhm.
there's still a long way to go in terms of finding women behind the scenes, whether running showrooms, whether show running. And then I think when you add any additional hyphen to it,
Right.
like a Black female showrunner, Black lead writers, any sort of hyphen you add, you'll find less and less and less and less and less and less. And then when you have those conversations with the writers and other creatives, oftentimes people have been frustrated with the lack of a pipeline to get in those positions. So it's a bit of like a chicken and the egg, right? It's
Yeah.
like you need the
Yeah.
experience to get the position,
Hmm.
but you know what I mean? But you can't get in the position if you don't have the experience.
Right. Right. Yep.
So that's what launched the idea about what if we created something that created a couple of different segments to it. There's the mentorship aspect of it, which now provides mentorship from women in various areas of the business. Um, we have mentorship. There's like a speaker sort of series at the
Hmm.
beginning of the program before we get into like the production aspect of it. And the writers get to speak to development executives, acquisition executives, agents, managers, marketing executives. Obviously they're not trying to become marketing execs, but it's like if you don't understand sometimes when you're starting out, you don't have the full visibility of the
Right.
pie and you don't often understand where you fit into this. So there's a lot of mystery, I think, when you're new in the business, regardless of if you're trying to be a writer, a director, even an actress. I think sometimes you can be so focused and you have the blinders on for what you do, you don't fully understand where you're fitting into things.
Right. Right.
And that also makes rejection a lot harder because if they don't pick you, if they don't pick your writing ability to write something, you can be internalizing it and thinking it's you. But sometimes there's so many factors, as you know, like there's a million
Yeah.
factors that go
To
into
go into
why
everything. Yeah.
you don't know. So the idea with the mentorship program was to both take away the mystery of the process a bit, to hopefully allow people to get out of their own way because sometimes the nerves can eat you up. We go through a whole pitching thing to like to kind of break down what it means to pitch. How should you present yourself when you're pitching? That's a big thing. People don't know how to pitch, and sometimes you don't get the job because of your pitch,
Right. Right. Are
right?
you is it is the are the candidates or the people that come in, are they usually very first time, beginning writers, or are you finding that there's, even people have been trying for a while, or women who've been
Yes.
trying for a while?
It's definitely a combination. It's definitely a combination. So when they join, generally they're non-union.
Uh-huh.
They haven't gotten like the big opportunity yet.
Okay.
But honestly, I found it's pretty 50-50. Like we'll have a good portion that are greener, like they maybe haven't done anything yet. But there are a large percentage, I would say, that have done other programs, maybe have entered competitions and had great feedback, but they just haven't been able to get their footing. Like they just can't figure out how to like get their foot over the hump.
Right. Right.
And the goal in the program is to find fellows who are absolutely ready and prepared
Mhm.
and they want this. Like this is an opportunity. They want to become writers. Like this is the career path they have chosen. And in this process, we help them to workshop their scripts, get their scripts production ready. They're going to be getting notes from their writing advisors, their mentors. Then they eventually get notes from myself and other members of the team. So they're getting like actual like studio notes essentially, which is not always easy for a
Yeah.
writer, period, let alone a
Right.
new writer. But we have those conversations too about understanding sometimes not just the note, but sometimes the note beneath the note to understand sort of like what to kind of remove the emotional.
Okay. And yeah.
Coming from songwriting, I understand how hard that
Yeah.
can be. Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes they're like,
It's personal.
oh, I wrote this about the time that I had. And it's very, but it's not that. Sometimes it's just okay, oftentimes they'll get the note from me, hey, we have to use it or lose it, right? Especially because we're doing a short film
Right.
and
Right.
you're conscious of budget. If you haven't done this before, you've never had to think about things like a budget. So ultimately, our fellows walk away with their script being workshopped. They have a short film. Our last sessions have been distributed on Peacock. So they
Yep.
get distribution. We partner with Sundance on this. So they premiere at Sundance. And Sundance has been an amazing partner in
Yeah.
terms of their shared resources, their shared knowledge. their contribution to talking to the fellows also. Like,
Hmm.
this is like amazing stuff that growing up, I wish I would have had access to these sort of things.
Yeah.
And we hope that by providing this, we're putting women in position to build a career,
So
like build.
tell us, so I can have it on the podcast. And I know we do put women right now information in our newsletter, but what's the cycle? So is the what's the cycle of the year of
Yeah.
normally of entering, of having it done? Because obviously, and does is the expectation that you have something to go to Sundance within a year, or is how's that cycle?
Yeah, so the normal cycle of the women right now, so the next cycle, whenever we get back up and running, will be like a cycle three.
Okay.
So we've completed two cycles, partnered with Sundance, and I would say it's about a year. So
Okay.
generally, submissions open up around like May, June in a normal year,
Hmm.
and we by like July we generally sort of know like who our fellows will be, and that sort of starts like the mentorship part of the program while we're
Okay.
going through all the submissions and I mean sorry going through the scripts, not submissions, going through the scripts, starting to fine tune that whole bit. And by August last year, we were in prep. That's
Wow.
really quick.
Yeah.
As anyone knows, that's really quick. So it's very like truncated in terms of the process, and we
Mhm.
try to like really make it very tight. And then by the fall, we're filming, and then we deliver before the end of the year for
That's
Sunday.
amazing. Wow, that is a fast.
It's
That's
fast.
so fast, but it's so exciting
Yeah,
for the submission. Wow.
it is.
Okay,
But
we'll
one
make
thing
sure
that's
that's out there.
Yeah, and one thing that's really great is that the fellows and the directors are working with seasoned crew. So they're working. So one thing that was really important to us also in this process was understanding that you're working with a lot of first time folks. And even though they may not be like legitimate first time,
Mhm.
it's still new. This is a new process. And even if they're not a first time writer, often they haven't had anything made and actually produced into something. So their first time
Mhm.
on set. And it was really important when putting together the crew that we found people, anyone who's contributing has to have the heart and sensibility of learning and sharing.
Mhm.
Super important because you have to have patience and you have to have the spirit of like wanting to share your knowledge. And I only say that because not everyone has that. And
Right,
you
right.
it shows up when you're under stress. So it was really important for us that we found like people who understood the mission and believed in it and really were just all about it. And we've found that we've had everyone from amazing crew members, and these are crew members who have worked on our films and our TV shows and super seasoned, super capable, and just the way everyone sort of has wrapped their arms around the fellows in terms of like sharing information, sitting down, going through, you know, our directors working with the writers to just sort of explain the process so that they feel like they're a part of the process and that they're not sort of on the outside watching.
Mhm.
They're not spectators. They've been able to come on board essentially as like creative producers and have some sort of say in their projects. Um, all that's crucial. Like all that's crucial. And our last two sessions, the directors are actually actresses who have expressed
Oh,
interest in directing.
interesting.
And yeah, so they've expressed interest in directing. And so they're essentially new directors as well. And that's also created a bit of a pipeline. So even though the program isn't for the directors, it's actually created a lot of opportunities for the directors who have a lot of them have gone on to shadow and even direct their own projects since doing this program. Directors like Megan Good, Tika Sumter, Nicole Byer,
That's
Logan.
amazing. Does
Allen.
is the whole are the whole is the whole crew women when the projects are chosen?
Yeah, the whole crew is not women.
Okay. Okay.
They're not the whole crew is not women, but they all are for the cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the whole crew is not women.
But I love it. It was starting out to foster new writers, but you're like you're saying now you're fostering someone who's wanting to direct and that
Yes,
hasn't had that chance. So it's really like it's a real incubator.
it's a real incubator program, and like we're always thinking about ways to continue to sort of deepen the process, to make sure that people are walking away feeling like it's extremely fruitful.
Right.
Hopefully it's like helping to like build their knowledge base and their tool belt in different ways. You walk away with relationships. A lot of the fellows came into this not knowing other people in the business or not really
Hmm.
having a
Hmm.
network. You walk away with like knowing executives and agents at all the major agencies and production company executives. Like Ty's our CEO. I'm heading up film, and they have a direct line to us to go through
Right.
questions.
That's such a gift. Oh my
It's
gosh.
I really hope that it's something that they find to be really useful in their career because if you it's I think a big part of the challenge is the mystery, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like it's very scary walking into a room to pitch for the first time. And I think
Right.
when you're on the other side of the table as the executive or the producer, sometimes you can forget how intimidating that is. And hopefully this sort of like pulls that back so they're able
Hmm.
to bring their full self and focus on the work and not the nerves of it all, but
Well, that executive
Mhm.
team, yeah, being so available. Another thing that is coming up and feels like it's I don't know if it's a trend, but when you're talking about Ty and you're talking about the team, and I mean, there's a lot of women in executive, and I was just doing some research on another project with Will Packer and his team, and
Yeah,
has so many women. And then we had an executive from Seth MacFarlane's team, and they're all women. Is like these smart creative men are surrounding themselves with smart creative women. And do you feel like there's that the needle's moving, that they're, I mean, you're in your circle, which I assume,
yeah,
you're dealing with a lot of executives and a lot of
yeah.
interaction from different production teams. Are you seeing more women in the mix?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I still think there's a far way to go. I think across the abroad, when I
Yeah.
say across, in my circle, in my orbit, absolutely. I am very grateful. I get to work with some of the most brilliant minds in the business, and they're women. And I think that it absolutely, it should have always been this way, in my
Right,
opinion.
right.
I think it's just kind of getting to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think that there's still a bit of a disparity. I think there's still we still have a long way to go in terms of
Mhm.
industry
Mhm.
wide, especially when you talk about decision making
Mm.
positions,
Mhm.
green lighting ability.
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that's
Interesting.
fantastic about Heartbeat is, and what's been really I think great for our fellows specifically for the program. It's like they're talking to women that are in green lighting positions. Like we can get
Mhm.
the project made, we can produce
Mhm.
it, we can bring it through the pipeline. I think across the industry, we could probably see more women in those positions. I think that would be great to see. But it has to start somewhere. And I think
Right.
it's there, right? I
Yeah,
think
the executive side of things seems to be now, when you're looking at projects that you're either producing projects or acquiring projects, do you look at the teams that are the voices that have written it, and the diversity of those voices, the diversity of the team, does that come into play when you guys are making decisions on projects?
I would say absolutely. I think ultimately you look at the whole package.
Hmm.
No, I think the whole package as a whole, I think you first start with the content, right? Because content is key. You want to make sure that the content production value is there, the story is compelling. Does it resonate with the audience? Does it
Hmm.
resonate with our audience? Who are the filmmakers? And the reason why it's important to just sort of know where it's generating from is you want to make sure it's authentic.
Right.
You want to make sure that it's coming from an authentic place and it's hitting the mark because they're not separate, right? It's like
Hmm.
our audiences are smart. Our audience, we are an audience. We are part of the audience as well, right? So we want to know that when we are consuming something, that it's authentic to whatever that story is, and having a creative team that's reflective of that is equally important. Yeah, so I think that's absolutely. I think all those pieces come into it, um, and but it's a holistic approach.
Right.
It's not just
Right.
like one thing.
Tell
Yeah.
me, what are you loving right now that you're watching? What's when you do, and I so feel what what you were saying about you're always whatever you're reading, whatever article, whatever book. It's like, does someone have the option for this? What's the story? What, what's but what whether it's feature films or streaming or reading, what is it that you're loving right now?
Ooh, I have to say, so it's interesting. I am the mom of a 9-month-old baby
Oh my
girl.
gosh! Congratulations.
Thank you. So I think whatever little time I had has now become even less time. I basically get from her bedtime to my bedtime, which is now super early to watch anything. Um, but when I can watch, I'm really loving. I'm really, what am I enjoying right now? Well, Heart to Heart is one of our shows, and I'm not
Okay.
just saying this. It's literally one of my favorite shows. It's been one of my favorite shows for us to produce.
Okay.
It's also one of my favorite shows to watch, and I really encourage people to watch it because if you, like we mentioned, if you like hearing the stories of
Hmm.
people and their journeys,
Hmm.
the trajectories, it has been one of the biggest gifts to work on a project like that. Just the gems that are shared on that show, I
Hmm.
absolutely recommend it. It's binge worthy. It's actually something I would go back and watch like again and again. Like
Yep.
some of the things have really stuck with me. So, and the new season just dropped. That's streaming on Peacock. I'm loving The Bear.
Do you
It's so
love the
good.
bear?
It's so good.
Oh my gosh, have you watched the
So
second
good.
season?
I'm just starting the second season. I had to get caught up on the first season,
Right.
and I just finished it. So now I'm about to start the second season, and I can't
Okay, we have to talk again after call me after you watch the second season
wait.
because I'm telling you, and I am not an expert. I mean, my whole world was film and theatrical exhibition, but
Yes,
the second season of The Bear is brilliant.
I can't wait. It's
Oh
such a
my gosh.
diverse show. I'm like, everyone deserves a nomination. It's so
Right, right. Just the I mean, I almost wanna watch it again and just concentrate on the music. I mean,
oh,
it's just and
interesting.
yeah, it's, and I wasn't an early. I had to be talked into the first season kinda halfway through. I was one of those, "Really? It's a little manic for me?" All
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, my husband started it already, and he's like, and he's from Chicago, so he's
Oh,
like all in.
yeah.
So I can't wait. So we'll have to circle up on that one. Watching that one, I'm watching Survival of the Thickest.
Oh, I've heard that's good. I haven't started it.
It's so
She's
cute.
hilarious.
I think that Michelle is just such
Yeah.
a talent. She's such a phenomenal, just a great a great comedic actress as well. Like I'm enjoying that. I think that's great.
Yeah, she is
And
so fun. I met her, or not literally met her, but through she's always a guest on one of one of my murder podcasts that I
oh,
listen
that's
to.
so
She's like
random.
a friend of the pod, and they started bringing her on, and she's hilarious. Michelle
Oh,
Buteau, for anyone
I
who
love
doesn't know who we're talking about, but
she's a
hilarious. Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah, that's how I was like I learned about her by such a roundabout way.
Those are like my faves right now. Those are my faves. And then
Those are good ones.
I try to catch in just like that whenever I can, but I'm
Mhm.
always late. I'm always like late. I always have to like catch up like
Yeah,
two whenever I
yeah.
get like some me time.
Right, right. No, but those are all good ones. I have just recently learned to appreciate the
Mm,
30-minute show, the
yeah.
shorter podcast. I got really wrapped up in I mean, I was listening to some of the podcasts that were an hour and a half long. One of my favorite movie ones starts getting, and now I've really started to appreciate the nuggets, the nugget podcast, the nugget shows. That's what I call like the
Yeah.
bear and those that, that less than 30 minutes. We can appreciate those now.
And also it's challenging. I think one of the things I learned when we did the first
Uh,
Die Heart for Quibi, that was a challenge for us because like you had to do the short form content, and
yeah.
essentially you had to everything needed to be a bit of a standalone. So like you had to make sure you had to have cold open
Uh,
cliffhanger every episode.
It's
That's not
hard, right? Well, especially for probably for Kevin too. He's used to having 2.5 hours if he wants it.
yeah, he's a total pro, but it was definitely a challenge. And so I learned that 22-minute format it's when you nail it, I think
Mhm.
that's volumes for the ones that do.
And then, if in business wise, what can you share with us that's coming next? Do you? do you I know, I mean, obviously I know you have a lot of projects that aren't specifically starring, that Kevin isn't always in, but what are you guys what's upcoming
Yeah.
next
Yeah, I
for
think
Heartbeat?
yeah, I think that people will be excited. Like we're doing a lot of docs. We're in the
Mm.
doc space, and that's something that people maybe aren't as familiar with for us. Um, so that's something that's been a great one too. And I don't know if everyone's like familiar of all the things that we do. Like Dave is a heartbeat
Oh yeah,
chef.
Dave, I know. That's what I'm saying. The things that he's not in or
Yeah,
in, Dave is
yeah.
fantastic.
There's quite a bit. There's quite a bit, and like that's an example of one that's just a great show. They
Mhm.
had a great season, and then also like our doc space. We have our podcast. If no one's familiar with that, they should definitely check it out. We've got some great ones like with Punky Johnson, who's another
Yeah.
great comedian. So definitely a lot to tune into.
I feel like the comedian, the comic world is just having such a moment these last, and I don't know if it was from the pandemic where people wanted to be lighthearted, but and companies like yours that are championing all of these multi hyphenates. We did an interesting panel in New York, a dinner not too long ago, and it really was the topic kind of evolved to. Um, whether it was an athlete or a singer or an actor becoming so many more things. I hate the multi hyphenate, I guess, for the kind of the word, but it's there's such an opportunity now, whether it's because of streaming or because of podcasts or just
Mhm.
to do all of those different things. And I see you guys championing that a lot. But I feel, yeah, comedians seem to be breaking out of their shells these last few years.
It's so interesting. I think there's a misconception often with comedy that it's easy. And
Oh,
I think that's part of I think that's part of the beauty and also part of the craft of it all, right?
right.
It's actually so hard. Like
Hmm.
even when we get in scripts, like trying to find a great comedic script is not there's just way less than you would imagine.
Hmm.
But it's also, I think that speaks to the accessibility of comedy and a way of helping to transcend culture, language. It's a way of breaking down barriers. And I think as a society, we've had a tough couple of years. And I think that
Yeah,
this is like
yeah.
people are looking for levity in in different situations. And I think that's something that we hope to bring to the table as a company
Hmm.
and our projects. And I think also just as a genre, that's why we're seeing so many of these great sort of comedic hybrid projects, whether it's action comedy, which we love
Right,
that space, or whatever it is, romance comedy, or all those different things. People want to feel good a little
right,
bit.
right. Well, and
People want
even the dramedy, I feel like there's even that there's nothing better than that, whether it's a little sad or a little sweet, but that it has that comedic, aspect to it because it just feels more real. I think it feels you can really tie to it better in your own life. And like we all have to laugh a little through those things. And yeah, the no I feel like the comedy is. And somebody the other day was talking obviously about Barbie and Oppenheimer and Mission Impossible and all of that coming out at the same time,
yeah,
and saying it feels like it's a great message for society that it can be an and. You can love Oppenheimer and Mission Impossible
yeah,
and Barbie
yeah.
and laugh and not it doesn't have to be one other. Then it spun off into an award season conversation and how which that I don't know if we'll ever evolve to comedies being appreciated for awards, but as a society, yeah, we there's always and why not?
Why not? Why not? Right? And that if you love art and if you love film and TV, you can love it all.
Right.
You can have the chips and the chocolate cake. You can have both. You can enjoy it all. It's okay.
So going back a little bit to your personal story and everything that you've shared has just been so helpful and so interesting, and I think for our listeners who are I think kind of similar to what you described for women right now is, a lot of people coming up, a lot of people starting, a lot of people, changing careers, but
Yeah.
listening and those tools in their tool belts. I'm hearing from you that educate yourself, whether it's a class, whether it's researching, but
Yeah.
and what else do you do for yourself if you have a situation where you're feeling like you're not quite prepared, or you're just, maybe it's just a crappy day, or you're just tired. What are your kind of go-tos that you shore yourself up a little bit mentally, physically, emotionally, intellectually?
It's so funny. I just had a conversation with my husband about this yesterday. I'm like, this last year has been one of the most challenging years and also incredible years. And I feel like I've grown more in every aspect, whether that's like as a human, as a mother, as a partner,
Mhm.
as an executive, because you really do have to, you really, for myself, I have to sort of tap into different places within
Mhm.
myself. Also, learning to give yourself grace if
Right.
you're not feeling great or having a crappy day, or maybe you feel like, you're just not your eight. Like some days you're just like, I'm amazing. Other days you're like, eh. I think having grace for yourself and being kind to yourself and understanding
Mhm.
that you're allowed to feel all the things that you are feeling, and that's all valid, and you kind of have to let that flow through you. And this is something that I'm actively working on because it's a new dynamic. And
Mhm.
you know there's a lot of demands when you're in different positions. I think like the higher up you go, regardless if you're an executive, a producer, a writer, director, you're going to have those demands don't stop, and that's okay. But I think it's also being a lot more mindful of time management.
Mm.
Sometimes I give myself that time to just like allow myself time to watch a show. Like you,
Right, right.
it's like you really have to make sure you're prioritizing those aspects for yourself, because they also feed who you are. They
Mhm.
feed you have to be feeding your creative spirit. You have to be feeding your health, your mental health, all the things. um, I've really tried to make time on weekends to go, and luckily I have a partner, my husband, who is also into a lot of these things, so we'll go to exhibits and festivals and like farmers markets and like things like that. They may sound very simple, but they all give you some sort of creative juice or energy
Right, right.
to
Well,
fill
and
that.
being with other people, I think that's such a nice, being
It is.
outdoors even, or being with other people. I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, we get so caught up in, if I'm not feeling 100%, then I get under the covers, or, and really that, almost that being in society, or being, in a communal, I guess, experience with
Yeah.
somebody, with other creatives, or like-minded, is really nice.
Yeah. You almost have to push yourself. 'Cause I think to your point, sometimes
Mhm.
the natural inclination is to sort of like retreat when you're not feeling great. Um, Myself included. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna stay in, da da da. But
Right.
honestly, going for a drive,
Yeah.
going for a drive to see a neighborhood that you might like, or maybe someplace in nature or by the
Mhm.
beach, or things like that. Just kind of getting outside, getting around people. It's just nice, and also it's been really cool because like having our baby. Also, I feel like that's been also inspiration to like I want to make sure she's seeing all the things.
Right, right.
I'm like she won't remember it, but it's still like I like her to like see it, look at the trees, look at the
Right, right.
ocean, and
Yeah,
she's
you're right.
very.
No, sometimes just a walk is nice.
And honestly, that sort of has it's forced and sort of encouraged me to like get outside, because when you're busy it's so easy to be like I gotta go here, I have to be there, I'm in a
Right,
DoorDash, I'm going to a restaurant. Now it's like, oh, let's go for a walk. I
right,
haven't,
right.
you know my dogs are also thankful. They're like, we go for all the walks now. We
Yeah,
go
I
for.
use mine as an excuse, like, "Oh, I don't wanna do that today. I don't wanna go for a run. I don't want to," and I look at my dog and I'm like, "Okay, I'll feel the guilt will override the not wanting to go out."
Oh, they want those walks. When they hear
Right.
we're going for a walk, they're excited. We have three dogs, so it's a very active
I was
household.
gonna say, you guys have a whole outing if you leave the house then.
It's like always a thing. It's like does the one dog have a booster seat because she's really small? Like
Oh.
then the other ones are really big. It's like a whole thing.
That's funny. Well, Candace, I can't believe we're already out of time. We've been talking for an hour. I can't believe this, but it has
This
been
is
so
great.
nice to meet you. And
Likewise.
you have just shared your story, I mean, the message I take away from our talk, especially for our listeners, is, knowledge, 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 and however, so many different ways, giving yourself knowledge and educating yourself, which is just, such a great message and so empowering. And so thank you for joining us. And I definitely want to talk after you watch The Bear.
I would love that. I would love that. This has been phenomenal. I feel like we could have talked for a whole other hour.
I
This was great.
know, I know. There's so much, but thank you for all the great things that you're doing, for women in your company and for you personally. We will continue to keep up on Women Right Now on our newsletter and following what you guys are doing. But thank you for your time. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you for having me. I hope the storm isn't too
No,
crazy.
I think it's passed a little bit now. I had a couple of where I was like, oh, are we going to? But I think underground wiring and all that helps. So
Good.
we don't lose power very often. But
So
yeah,
smart.
yeah.
Thank
So
you so
all
much,
right,
Gretchen.
thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. All
All
right.
right.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To stay up to date with In Her Words, join the conversation by following Women in Entertainment on our social channels and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at womenandentertainment.com.